Good. Hello and welcome. Let us start this session on behalf of the Mission Board and Secretariat of the Mission on Climate Adaptation. I will come back to say more about that, but I want to thank you for this opportunity for us to present our work and hopefully also to seek your advice. Particularly thank you to Virginia Murray, who made this session possible. Let me start introducing myself. I will be moderating this next 50 minutes. I'm the chair of the Mission Board on Adaptation. My name is Connie Hedegaard, and I'm a former EU Commissioner for Climate Action. Well, the background for these missions were that in the European Union, they were inspired by some work done among others by Mariana Mazzucato, that it would be good when you have very big societal challenges to create sort of a big mission. And the EU institutions decided to try and make 5 missions where we should try sort of to address huge challenges much more efficiently by working together and by exploiting our combined knowledge. Then we could do that in a much more efficient manner. And the 5 missions are cancer. I think that's self-explanatory. It is soil, health and food. It is healthy oceans. Then it's climate neutral and smart cities. And then it's the one we are going to speak about for the next little hour here, the Mission Board on Adaptation to Climate Change, including societal transformation. You will understand that that is quite a broad and big project. So how to translate such a huge endeavor into something tangible, something concrete, and very important for the missions, something that also the citizens of Europe can relate to. That's why to include Europeans in trying to work on this mission has been an important tool in the way that we have approached the work. But how can we sort of show this added value? How can we deliver results also in a not too distant future? So that was the task. In the Mission Board, we have been 15 persons from different sort of areas, knowing something about climate and climate change and societal change. And we worked on defining this during the spring months as the pandemic was accelerating ever more. So you will maybe not be surprised that we ended up sort of picking a sort of overall headline for our mission that we call a climate resilient Europe. The mission is to prepare Europe for climate disruptions and accelerate the transformation to a climate resilient and just Europe by 2030, meaning we have 1 decade to sort of achieve this. Later, in just some few minutes, you will hear much more about the specific objectives in our mission. But when it comes to our overall approach, the climate resilience, as we defined it, were understood to include resilience of environmental systems, resilience of social and economic systems, and resilience of political systems. And we're trying to work with sort of a concept of co-design, co-implementation, and co-evaluation. So it has been quite an sort of extensive way of trying to include many voices from outside also. But what we have sort of come up with areas of innovation, that is that we think that in order to transform the community systems, we must regenerate community and social infrastructure. It is a purpose in itself, protecting human health and well-being, restoring nature and ecosystem services. We must rethink water management, and we must revive rural landscapes and sustainable food systems. That is some of the main headlines that we are working with. And in order to achieve this, we must also create some enabling conditions. That means, for instance, we must be much better at using data and digital services. We must be much better in bringing knowledge into play. We must facilitate inclusive and deliberative governance. And that is also about governance in the broader sense. Personally, I think that governance is one of the key issues and key challenges we have in front of us, because the complexity is growing when you have to address these big challenges. So how to do it and reform the systems that are normally maybe not too capable of handling this kind of complexity. Then we also want to improve education and understanding on behavioral change. The behavioral part is part of what we are focusing at. We want to strengthen sustainable and circular local economies. And then, of course, there is also an issue on how do you mobilize the funds and the resources actually to make all these investments possible. That is actually some of the sort of key headlines of what we are trying to do. Last month, a group of commissioners gave the green lights to all the 5 missions in the European Union. And we have been told now that we have between 6 and 12 months to come up with an implementation plan. How are we actually doing this? And that is, of course, where it is extremely important for us to identify where can we have most impact, and how can we also avoid duplication. A lot of work is being done already by you and by many others out there. How can we avoid duplicating what is already being done? And that is why it is essential for us to have input from you, from your institutions, from others to our work. And that's why we're so happy to have this little hour here today. Let me now introduce the first speaker. Before I do that, I would though inform you that this session is being recorded, so you should of course just know that. And also please be aware that we have a chat function, so if you have questions, you can write chat questions there, and we will try and come to them. But I would now hand over the floor to Philip Tulkins. Philip Tulkins is a representative from DG Research and Innovation. That is where the secretariat for our mission sort of lives. That is our home, so to speak. Philip Tulkins, please, you have the floor now to try to make the link to the EU Green Deal and recovery. Please, Philip.
Thank you very much, Connie, and thank you for your introduction. It's an honor and privilege for the Commission to be able to dwell on the knowledge and skills of the expert group that you are chairing in this mission board. My presentation today is to place the mission on adaptation to climate change in the broader context of the EU policy priority, and namely here the Green Deal in the area of adaptation to climate change. Next slide, please. So in December 2019, the European Commission took a historic step with the launch of the European Green Deal. For the first time, we are looking beyond the current policy and investment cycle to a time horizon that is very long for policies, 2050, when we aim to achieve climate neutrality in the European Union. The Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described the Green Deal as a roadmap for action, providing a long-term vision for the environment, the economy, and society as a whole. Of course, when the Green Deal was launched, COVID-19 had not yet upended the planet. However, from the outset, the Green Deal was presented as EU's new growth strategy. And these words are very important because it's a significant shift in the understanding of and the content of growth. And this has not changed due to the pandemic. The European Union will spend 1.8 trillion to help reboot the economy, and European leaders agreed in June that 30% of this amount should be allocated to climate objectives. The Green Deal is the motor and the compass of our recovery, and now it is time to fully commit to climate neutrality. Next slide, please. Example of climate policies underpinning the Green Deal include the climate law, enshrining the commitment to climate neutrality by 2050 in the legislation, and the increased ambition for 2030 mitigation target, going to 55% emission reduction from 1990 level, which is a considerable increase from the 40% target that was already quite demanding in terms of transformation. A new, more ambitious strategy on climate change adaptation will be launched in spring 2021, aiming for climate resilience in Europe. The mission we'll talk about today is fully part of this strategy. It is not meant to implement the strategy as such, but to test solutions and inform the implementers of the strategy on what are the best solutions that research and innovation can deliver for the transformation that is required. Other important policy being launched, the Climate Pact, which has the goal to engage the public on climate action. The Climate Pact initiative will be announced on the 9th of December, so very soon, and I invite you to have a read at what is proposed in that document soon to be adopted. Next slide. Now, with regard to the contribution of research and innovation, research and innovation is an enabler of the Green Deal transitions across the major work streams: climate, energy, industry, circular economy, building, mobility, food, and so on. It is important to know that at least 35% of Horizon Europe's budget, so the research and innovation program for the next 7 years, around 85 billion, will be devoted to climate-related activity. There's a commitment on the expenditure. This is important to be reminded. There will be a new wave of research and innovation and partnerships across a range of key sectors: clean hydrogen, clean steel, bioeconomy, bio-based, green aviation, waterborne transport, ecosystem services, and the built environment, and more. So this means plenty of opportunities for research organization, but not only research organization, all entities who want to contribute to the transformation through the usage also of research innovation outputs. By developing, de-risking, demonstrating, and deploying breakthrough innovation at scale, we can help to drive long-term systemic shifts beyond the normal policy, electoral, institutional, and investment cycles. Accelerating the movement is really the motto here. A forward-looking, mission-oriented, and impact-focused research and innovation agenda can power the Green Deal transformation. Next slide, please. Quickly, Connie Edegaard gave an overview of the title. I will go quickly on this and would suggest that if you are interested, Google all the documents from the different mission boards in the 4 Green Deal missions that are here appearing on your screen on adaptation to climate change: soil, health and food, climate neutral and smart cities, healthy oceans. The documents from the experts group, so the board advising the Commission, are available and are very rich documents to inform the Commission on what could be done, perhaps should be done also in the mission. And now the Commission is reflecting on how to take these excellent advices and integrate them in the policies and prepare the implementation plans for these missions. Next slide, please. Just on the characteristics of the mission, it's not just a new word. There's a concept there, and we try to implement the concept while keeping its strength and philosophy. The missions shall be based on challenges relevant for a wide range of European citizens, resulting in pan-European added value and impact. They should be open to multiple bottom-up approaches and solutions taking into account human and societal needs and benefits. They should be bold and inspirational, have wide scientific, technological, societal, and economic and/or policy relevance and impact. All this was asked to the board, the group of experts. It was almost an impossible task to meet all the criteria at the same time, but they did it. And the mission should achieve within a set time frame a measurable goal that could not be achieved through individual actions. Next slide. With regard to the mission, the proposed mission on adaptation to climate change, you'll hear more just after with Jaroslav Mizak. The proposed mission on climate change adaptation aims to get Europe prepared to unavoidable climate impacts and to accelerate the transformation to a climate resilient and just Europe. The clock is ticking, the damages are increasing, and we need to accelerate the movement. It will be fundamental to the success of the new climate change adaptation strategy that within this strategy, solutions are tested and scaled up, solutions coming from research and innovation. This mission is rooted in research and innovation, but goes far beyond and in the deployment. And that's why this is innovative, because the research and innovation activities are not confined to the research communities and those who may take it up someday. We really want to make a difference on the ground in a shorter amount of time. So creating enabling conditions for societal transformation is also part of this mission objective. And this is, of course, requires a lot of engagements of citizens, stakeholders, and the participations of many of the entities you work for. We want to provide demonstration of deep resilience. And of course, you will hear more on this with the following speakers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Philip Tolkens. And we will right away move to the next speaker, which is the rapporteur of our mission board, Jaroslav Mizak, the director of the Research Division Risk Assessment and Adaptation Strategies at the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change. And Jaroslav Mizak has a long history as an academic within the field of risk and climate extremes. Jaroslav, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Connie. Just to check, can you hear me and can you see my screen in full presentation mode?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. So I will, with few slides and few minutes, I'll talk you through a set of recommendations and the transformational agenda that we proposed. The document with all the recommendation has been handed over to the European Commission in September during the Research and Innovation Days. And you can access the document also following this link on the left side of the slide. So the set of recommendation is a result of intense work and discussion among all board members, whom you can see on the picture. And of course, that was wonderfully and excellently coordinated by Connie. Okay. So what we are proposing are basically three objectives. And the first objective is to prepare Europe to deal with climate disruptions and assist all citizens, communities, and the regions in better understanding, preparing for, and managing climate risk. So this is an immediate benefit for everybody in Europe. And it includes facilitating access to knowledge on climate risk, assisting the communities to develop risk management plans and ensure that the social infrastructure is safe and accessible also during the times of crisis. So this is an immediate and first objective, also drawing on our experience after COVID health crisis, to learn how to deal with disruptions and prepare for them. The second objective is accelerate the transformation to a climate resilient future, supporting 200 regions and communities as the seed of social change. And the support that we will provide from the mission is to create a transformative vision, innovative pathways, and solutions for transformative adaptation within safe planetary boundaries. So this is the core of what we are suggesting, is to start with seeds, and those seeds are region and communities across Europe. They build, they vision, they prepare, they plan, they develop and are helped to develop their transformative pathways and act as the ambassador of the change for all the other communities and in the regions in the neighborhood. The third and the final objective is building deep resilience and scaling up actionable solutions that have been tested before in triggering the social transformation through 100 deep demonstrations of resilience across a number of European communities and regions. And here we place an emphasis on scaling up the transformative nature of the intervention and cross-border collaboration. So here we really expect that the 100 deep demonstrations will deliver EU value, added value to existing initiatives. So we already have regional cooperation programs. We already have established LIFE program, for example, Interreg program. The mission will work together with them in order to scale up the impact of this change. So those are the 3 objectives that we are proposing as a part of very ambitious, transformational, and systemic innovation. Now, the way how we suggest to work, we of course focus on the community and communities and regions, and this is complementing what has been achieved or what is being planned for European Adaptation Strategy. So you know that the European Adaptation Strategy, the new one, will be released in February, building up on the achievement from the first adaptation strategy that was released in 2013. And the mission is really can be seen as a part of the European Adaptation Strategy, and it's really focusing on the bottom level, the community, the citizens and the regions, and trying to foster catalyze change in this level. So the way how we imagine the transformative agenda to work is around key community systems and enabling conditions. We have, in the scoping document, we have identified 5 community systems, and those are community and social infrastructure, health system and well-being, nature, biodiversity and ecosystem services, water resource management, and thinking about the new way how to deal with water security, and reviving a rural landscape and fostering the sustainable food systems. Of course, those 5 community systems are a suggestion, and they might be extended. And the idea is that the innovation project that will be fostered throughout the mission would not focus on a single community system, but rather taking the systemic character of the transformation would combine ideally all 5 or more community systems, or at least most of them. Of course, there's also a second level of what we are focusing on is preparing enabling condition for the change. And this includes data knowledge, digital services, and actionable solution. And this is perfectly tied with the digital twin that is proposed by European Commission for the next program. And existing partnership, innovation partnership, and the landscape of actors that we already have there, Climate Kick in the first place, but also GPA Climate, also European Innovation Council, and so on. So we have a huge emphasis on making the data available, useful, and used by different stakeholders, user, and citizens. The second pillar is focusing on the inclusive and deliberative governance processes, really starting from the citizen engagement, giving them opportunity to be part of this change and co-design the objective and the transformative pathways. Local resources and economies is definitely a part of it. How to ensure that the local communities can build own resources, including through social economy, including through community wealth building approaches, to reinforce economic fundaments of the community and ensure viable businesses to be pursued also under the condition of climate change. The fourth element is communication, education, and understanding of behavioral change. We really think in the transformative agenda has a heavy focus on shifting away from the current practices, unsustainable practices, shifting the mindset of the people and encouraging new social entrepreneurs, social ways of working together in order to build the resilience. And finally, mobilizing funds and finances. The mission will help the communities and regions to design their financial plans, access the European funding, blend the private and public funding, and develop successful financial or economic policy instruments, or ensure that there is enough funds to back the transformational agenda. So what is our agenda? What is our approach to this? Is we are focusing on resilience of environmental systems, social and economic system, and political system. The environmental system is really a commitment to long-term sustainability. We will support overarching goals of the European Green Deal. And this is because the mission is a part of the European Green Deal. And that includes also reaching climate neutrality, adopting circular economy principles, preserving biodiversity, and toxic-free environment. The social system and economic system, we have a strong commitment to equity, social and gender justice. We speak to children and youth. We look at their priorities and their interest, their engagement. And of course, not leaving behind the most marginalized or vulnerable part of our population. So this is really the social transformation that we are promoting pervades all community systems and embraces social, economic, and cultural value change. The third, the resilience of political systems, is a commitment to inclusiveness, deliberation, shared values, solidarity, and respect for diversity. We will foster the transformation in a way that involves all actors, all citizens, civil society organization, public authorities, businesses and industry, academia, research and innovation, and other relevant organizations that can contribute to making the change happen. And my final slide is about, how we are going to get there. So it's our citizen and stakeholder engagement is building upon co-design, co-implementation, and co-evaluation. Co-design meaning building own vision of climate resilience. Implementation is, fostering the a shared vision and shared data and knowledge production, including the climate services, including the designing innovative solution and employing citizen science, citizen observatories, a type of, running mission labs or other type of close engagement techniques. And co-evaluation is absolutely important to show the progress made and monitor and identify what are the barriers, what we have learned. The mission is supposed to foster triple loop learning. That means not only learning about the problems, but also about the ways how we frame the problems and about how we socially construct the vulnerability and resilience at community level. So I hope this was clear. I would stop here and would be very happy to take questions afterwards. Thank you very much, and back to you, Connie.
Thank you so much, Jaroslav. And yes, it was very clear presentation, very much appreciated. And questions we'll come back to, and remember, questions can be written in the chat. But now I would like to move to our next speaker, Virginia Murray. Virginia Murray is Head of Global Disaster Risk Reduction Public Health England and Senior Public Health Advisor COVID-19, meaning she's quite busy these days, but she is also a member of the Mission Board on Adaptation. And Virginia Murray will now try to give us some examples from health issues that can inspire our mission. So please, over to you, Virginia.
Thank you so much, Connie. Thank you, Philippe, and thank you, Jaroslav. What a privilege it is to be part of this mission board, and I hope you can see my slides. Is that working, Maddie?
That looks fine, Virginia.
It works.
Thank you very much. So I'm really bringing in some of the science that we did to try and support the work that Jaroslav has been presenting. And I'm going to use some of the public health challenges and opportunities that help to try and discuss with our colleagues in the mission board what we could do about climate change adaptation with societal transformation. And a great privilege it was to do the discussions. So one of the things that we discussed is, what do we mean by these? And UNESCO has a very useful definition of what they regard as social transformation. That the world is undergoing important social transformations driven by the impact of globalization, global environmental change, economic and financial crises, really resulting in these very worrying growing inequalities, poverty, exclusion, and denial of basic human rights. And that there's a really important need to urge for innovative solutions to bring the universal values of peace, human dignity, gender equality, non-violence, and non-discrimination. And of course, to me, as with so many, young women and men are the most affected by these changes, and hence the principal key actors of social transformation. And we've tried to reflect them and their thoughts and their discussions and their engagement in the whole way through in what we've been doing. Now, in my world of public health and health discussions, we've tried to identify key strategies to invest in for adaptation to climate change. And these include enhanced early warning for extreme weather events and their cascading and complex hazards and risks. So all about behavioural change, particularly looking for the most vulnerable, possibly those with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which makes breathing much harder for some people. But we also wanted to emphasize the value of active travel and public transit, so that we would reduce the amount of vehicle pollution fumes, but also make people fitter and better able to cope with what they might be exposed to. And as part of our attempt to reduce air pollution, which causes such huge harm, we were looking at both outdoor and household air pollution, what we could think about to try and usefully invest. We wanted to encourage sustainable and healthy diets, probably reducing the amount of meat consumption, trying to make people much healthier in everything they do, and of course reduce the use of fossil fuels and plastics, and build sustainable and healthy cities that some of our other missions would very much tasked with thinking about. So these are just the good public health strategies we think are so important to share. And we have a wonderful way of doing it, which health has included, which is a ladder of bioethics that was developed by Nuffield in 2007. And there's a whole series of choices. And I just wanted to run up and down this ladder with you now, just to show you some of the things you could do. The first is to eliminate choice, legislate. But legislation is tough. You've got to enable it and you've got to implement it. And it's really difficult to try and do it. But we in London, for instance, have legislated to stop highly polluting vehicles entering the centre of London. But you could restrict choice. You could change the standards for approved wood burners in smokeless zones. You could guide choice. A little bit of money may shift people to be able to buy things like to move towards electronic vehicles. And that's coming quite strongly now. We're trying to guide choices. Would you like to have tax breaks for the purchase of bicycles for travel to work? This is something we found very helpful from the public health point of view. And would you like to guide choices by changing the default policy, possibly by encouraging the issues of providing vegetarian choices only in some cuisines? Maybe we want to also think about enabling choices, enabling the ability of people to choose how they go. So we could build cycle lanes, or we could provide information about encouraging the reduced use of plastic carrier bags. But of course, the worst part of this ladder is do nothing. And that is the bit we really don't want people to do. We want them to move up the scale, but find the right point on the scale of this ladder of what they could do from the health aspects. As part of this, we have a behavioural change wheel. And this wheel is about developing behaviour change, building on or modifying interventions, and choosing from existing and planned interventions. This is very much a health approach where you can look at all the different things, because health touches everything. And it's very much reflected in the work that we've been considering in the mission. So it's about capacity, opportunity, and motivation. It's about all those things from regulation to communication. It's about coercion to training to education. It's trying to pull this together to see how we can engage everyone. So if we use that behavior change wheel, we can do things about thinking about assessment, such as acceptability, practicality, effectiveness, affordability, side effects, and most importantly, equity. We could encourage identifying, selecting key behaviours to focus on where we might achieve our policy objectives. We could build capability, opportunity, and or motivation in a diagnosis that will bring people's desired behaviour, because that's what they want to do. I wonder how many of you carry your own shopping bags these days and don't use plastic bags. Maybe selecting intervention types, such as broad types of intervention, such as education, persuasion, incentivization, coercion, training. Not so keen on coercion, training, environmental restructuring, modeling and enablement, and then formulating of an implementation policy with all these different measures that I've just been sharing. And of course, constructing the intervention, which is very much what the mission board is about and what Jaroslav has been talking about. Deciding on the details of the intervention and delivery with monitoring and evaluation. Are we making a difference? Are we delivering what is needed? So let's just think about societal transformation. In this year of COVID, it is worrying. We've had a terrible time for many of us, but what we have shown is that you can use a massive global health crisis to change behavior. We know people are better at hand washing, at respiratory hygiene, at social distancing, at self-isolation. And this has not just been in one country, it's been something that's been undertaken across the world in various ways. So if we were to use the fact that we do believe that societal transformation can work, are there systems that we can approach to determine and deploy the most cost-effective mix of policy options, such as the Nuffield intervention ladder or the behaviour change wheel, that might deliver these actions through an ambitious but realistic research and innovation activities? So very much of the science behind all this. And I cannot thank you enough, the European Commission, for really adopting and taking forward this incredible vision, and hopefully in the next few years building towards that 2050 vision that you have so clearly articulated, Philippe. So I summarize my thoughts with a slide, a cartoon that comes from the Wellcome Trust. We know we only have one world. Planetary health to us is all about ensuring a healthy home for humanity and all our ecosystems. But it means we need sustainable and healthy cities with more urban green spaces. We know we need sustainable and healthy diets, and that these should be well maintained and reduce the amount of gas emissions. We know we need to emphasize that walking, cycling and public transport are the best ways of travel. And we know that we should reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we have been using. We can't continue to abuse the world so much. And if we do this, why does it matter? We can accelerate environmental change. We can build planetary health for everyone, because it affects us all, and we need a future. Thank you, Connie, Philippe, and Jaroslav.
And thank you so much, Virginia Murray. And it's really good to hear in these heated days to hear a Brit thanking so warmly the EU Commission. Thank you, Virginia. Also, thank you very much for introducing us to the intervention ladder and the behavioral change wheel, and so visibly illustrate how there are a number of co-benefits to be had if we do this in a smart manner. Now, the chat has been open for your questions. Before I asked Maddie what she has found there, I would just have one question for Philip Tolkins, because now we just heard also in Virginia's intervention some of the sort of solid science that is already there in the field. Now we need to apply it. But I would argue that there are still many people out there who think that this is about research and innovation. The missions are about research and innovation. So maybe you could say a few words, Philip, about how at a later stage, this can sort of also lead to identifying some potential calls from the EU Commission when some of the knowledge gaps has been identified. But maybe you could just try and cover that aspect that I know that many people are asking about.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question and the presentations. Indeed, we know through these reports what we need to do. We don't fully know how to do them, and this is why the concept of mission is proposed. We need to test at scale, and we need to use what is available from the latest research and innovation outcomes. But it's clear that we can't just do it as we did before, with a very long time between the preparation of a concept towards its implementation. So the mission is rooted in innovation, but needs to go beyond. And concretely, it means that, of course, the research and innovation program is mobilized on this mission, but we will mobilize also other EU funding instruments, which are on the deployment side of the activities, so the cohesion policy and other funds available, but also we will call for those we will work with, the regions, the local communities, to bring in their knowledge and the funding mechanism that they have access to at the regional level or at the national level. So the goal is to have a whole chain of mobilization of all funding instruments, be it at European or national or regional level, to test in some areas the solutions that are addressing the risks that have been identified by the local communities. This bottom-up component is very important on the content of the activities. With regard to the funding, it should come from all levels in a good synergy and compatibility, which is also a challenge because not all the programs are necessarily designed to fully cooperate, but we are working on this to make this possible.
Thank you so much, Philippe. And now over to you, Maddie Weir, to take some of the questions, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you don't mind if I ask one first. And this is to all panelists. So we know that climate change has a disproportionate effect on women and on ethnic minorities and on people who may not have equitable kind of share in society. So I was wondering how equity has been considered by the mission and how it has been centered as a really important issue. Thank you.
Yep, who would give that a try? Yaroslav, please.
Yeah, I can take the question. Thank you very much, Maddie, for that. I mean, the concept behind the mission is, of course, to fostering the transformation across Europe, but particularly focusing by those that are most vulnerable or impacted by climate change. So we have two objectives, basically. One, to identify the really actionable solution to building resilience across Europe that have worked in some region, and extrapolate the reason why, and to what extent we can also learn from those examples and replicate the success in those regions that are lagging behind. So this is the transfer of knowledge, transfer of experience, the twinning approach between the regions and communities that we are fostering. The second one is really starting to work from the scratch with the communities and regions that are somehow disadvantaged in the whole process. Either they are disproportionately impacted by climate change or because they have low coping or adaptive capacity to deal with those. So there's part of the mission that is explicitly looking on those that are lagging behind somehow or are marginalized. And that might be, I mentioned, it might be marginalized in any sense. So elderly people that might be not able to voice their objective, or scale up their participation in policy processes. So it's really closely embedded in the idea of the mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yaroslav. I don't know if others want to chip in on that one, because as I can see, there is a question from Vance Bureau. Thank you for the presentation. Vance writes, I would like to ask the panel about their thoughts how this mission on adaptation that is focused on Europe could help the wider world in addressing climate change adaptation. Maybe, Virginia, you would try and give that a thought.
Thank you very much, Connie. To me, the luxury of being part of this exciting and really reflective mission has been that we've been able to go through so many of the issues that we've been identifying that were raised by the Paris Agreement on climate change in 2015. and reflecting all the Conference of the Parties discussions and debates, and how we can try and support this by using Europe as a model of good practice. I think if Europe can show that some of these approaches that you've been describing, Yaroslav, works, it will provide tools by which others can actually go ahead and make their response to climate change adaptation and resilience absolutely critical to their lives, their communities, and their networks. And I think that's what you came through so clearly in explaining, Yaro. And this is something that I feel very strongly about, because having worked on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and other networks, what we know is that we provide the evidence, but we don't necessarily provide the action that's so needed if we're going to make a change. Next year in Glasgow, the UK will be hosting the Conference of the Parties for sharing all the different things that might be needed. And I think it'd be really important to try and share that knowledge and try and make it much stronger. But to me, it is a really important step forward. And I thank so much the missions, partners, but also the European Commission for developing this process. And it's a privilege to be part of it. Thank you, Connie.
And thank you very much. I think there's also something to our focus on data and digital here that can probably be a help when it comes to disseminate whatever good solutions will be identified there. I can see now that there is also something on the chat from Shashank Misra from UN Habitat. I don't know, Shashank Misra, if I asked you to sort of explain and go on live instead of writing it in the chat, would you take the opportunity to comment, please?
Thanks, Connie. Sorry, I have joined the session late, but I was listening the presentation in the latter half of the discussion. My question is, currently we are implementing a climate change program under the GCCA Plus initiative of the EU. I mean, we just started the second phase of the program, and in the first phase we have actually involved into developing the policy instrument in Myanmar, which was largely absent in the sector of climate change in Myanmar. But the major challenge has been to reach out the most vulnerable group in Myanmar, even into the rural areas, where the climate change impact are visible but not completely understandable. And it has been very much challenging in a country where there is a very low understanding on the climate change, and it is relatively new sector. And also the country has been isolated from the global platforms for many years because of the non-democratic government, in the country, lack of use in the digital technology. So as we are talking about the social transformation, which is very much needed in the sector of climate change, is there any common platform for the EU initiative best practices where this societal transformation related practices has been shared and which can be widely replicated or at least referenced, in the local context in other countries?
Yes, thank you very much for that. Maybe I can say a few words about that aspect, because it's clear that our mission is very much sort of focusing on Europe and on European resilience. But it is also clear that the whole exercise internally in the EU Commission and among the EU institutions is to have ownership for this for others than DG Climate. But we work, of course, also with DG Climate. We work with DG Echo, some of those DGs that are working exactly with the vulnerable countries, as you are mentioning. So it is a very good input how we secure that whatever we come up with in our mission, that hopefully we'll get the green light to continue when we are through the implementation plan phase that we are now preparing, that then the good lessons learned can be disseminated and used, for instance, by DG Klima in the outreach they do with a number of vulnerable countries. And for instance, also before the COP in Glasgow, where adaptation also will play a role to try to sort of have something to sort of show as an example of how you can embrace and approach some of these big challenges. So for sure, we are not just sort of a closed club. We are trying really to get the ownership and to spread things throughout the EU Commission's different sectors. Now our time is running out, but I would now also give the floor to Yaroslav, please.
Thank you. No, just to complement, you have exhaustively answered the question, but just to highlight that there are a number of platforms that are already out there that have been developed, as a result of a European commitment to help other countries to adapt. First of all, the Climate Adapt portal is a clearinghouse, basically the first stop when you are looking for best practices. It's a initiative that is developed by European Commission in collaboration with European Environment Agency and Joint Research Center. So that on the Climate Adapt, you will find plenty of examples and good practice in terms of planning adaptation, designing societal transformation, and so on. The second platform that I would highlight is, of course, the DG Research has a portal that is showcasing all the relevant results of the European innovation and research projects. That was a huge effort put into developing a single portal containing a lot of very useful insight and information and so on. And the third that I would mention is the Copernicus Climate Data Store and the Copernicus Climate Change Service, which provides the data, very relevant climate data and essential climate variables for every place around the globe. So it's you might directly access the data for free, and you might use the tools that have been developed in order to manipulate or analyze the data and download only what you need. Those are only 3 examples out of many, many that we could mention. But there is plenty of information that has been collected and is ready to be used. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Jaroslav Misiak. And I think that will be sort of the kind of questions we will have time for. We have only 2 minutes back of this session. So just want to thank you for participating and thank you to our speakers. What we just heard also in the last response from Jaroslav Misiak, I mean, what we are trying to do in this particular mission, that is also to try to have a much more holistic approach, to get sort of to work cross-cutting and get out of the silos. That is, of course, a very, very complex exercise, but nonetheless, that is what we are trying to do. And we believe in the mission board that the pandemic has actually provided us with an opportunity to rethink and to reform the way we do things. I basically also think that there is an open-mindedness now with policymakers, decision makers of all kinds, and also with citizens, that there is a profound understanding that we cannot continue business as usual. We have to use this pandemic to rethink the way we do things. So that is an urgent challenge. As you have heard, we are trying to avoid duplication. We try to see how can we work more efficiently together and how can we identify best practices and then get them out there. And that is why we are very much focused on co-benefits, as you have heard, on the data and digital options. There's so much untapped potential there if we sort of link some of the challenges on resilience with the digital opportunities. And of course, also in the end, there would be some knowledge gaps and some governance challenges that need to be addressed. So that is many of the things that we are focusing at. How can we be better at bringing the knowledge that we already have into play? As said, we now have been given between 6 to 12 months to come up with an implementation plan. My hope is very much that by next summer, we would have an implementation plan ready so that we would also have, for instance, the criteria for selecting the 200 regions that you heard about we're working with, and start to identify the 100 deep demonstration projects. Because as we all know, this should not be a too long thing. We really need to get started doing things, and that is what we are very much keen on doing. So hopefully, after having delivered that, half a year from now, we would have the green light to actually deliver on this very crucial mission. Thank you very much for your interest today. Thank you very much to our speakers, and have a nice day and continued good conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie, and thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.